Hello everyone and welcome back to another Canadian Politics Explained video. And in today's video we're going to be going over the popular vote trends in Canadian elections since 1993. So if I just go over here to the poll tracker, first we'll talk about the current polls as of April 6th. Nothing has changed, or the poll tracker hasn't been updated for 6 days now. I will make a video tomorrow when the poll tracker is updated again for this week. So overall, the Liberals are leading by about 6 points, same as my last video. NDP sitting at about 18%, Bloc at about 7%, Green at 6.5%, and other parties such as the People's Party at 3% in total. So overall, the Liberals are maintaining a healthy lead, at least in the popular vote, over the Conservatives. And they're projected to increase the number of seats right now. This is in contrast to the 2019 election, where the Liberals lost the popular vote, but still were able to win a minority government, as they won 157 seats, but only from only 33.1% of the vote to the Conservatives' 34.4% of the vote, but they only won 121 seats. The main reason for this was because the Conservatives were able to greatly increase their support in Western Canada, especially Alberta and the Prairies. And in BC, they were also able to win 17 seats, and putting the Liberals and the NDP in a tie for second place with 11 seats each. So if I go here, as you can see, Alberta and Saskatchewan look very blue. In fact, there are zero Liberal seats in any of these provinces. The only seat that isn't Conservative in Alberta and Saskatchewan is an NDP seat in Edmonton, in Alberta. In Manitoba, it's less lopsided, as the Liberals have 3 seats, the Conservatives have 7, and the NDP have 4. And as you can see here, the Liberals lost 29 seats last election, mostly to the Conservative Party, but they also lost some to the Bloc Québécois. The NDP also experienced losses, and the Green Party was also able to gain 1 seat, their first seat outside of British Columbia ever in their history, and the independent seat is Jody Wilson-Raybould in Vancouver. So if I go down here, this is Alberta down here. As you can see, the Conservatives were able to win nearly 70% of the popular vote. The Liberals lost all their 4 seats in this province. And yeah, this was basically a blowout for the Conservative Party, as and this is why their popular vote margin, well, they were able, and this is why they were able to win the popular vote, because they had such a strong showing in Western Canada, but a lot of these votes were wasted votes because of first past the post. Similar story in Saskatchewan. The NDP were able to win a slightly larger percentage of the vote, but they still lost all 3 of their seats, and the Liberals lost their 1 seat that they held in Saskatchewan. The Conservative Party, once again, 64% of the popular vote in all 14 seats, but once again, a lot of these are wasted votes. In Manitoba, as I said, less lopsided. Conservatives won 45.8% of the vote. Liberals and NDP added up to just over the Conservative Party's total vote share, but the Conservatives still were able to hold a pretty commanding lead in this province. Liberals lost 3 of their seats there, and 1 to the NDP and 2 to the Conservatives. So if I shift over here to the 1993 election results, as you can see here, the Liberals were able to win 41.3% of the popular vote, and thus win a majority of seats and form a majority government. A lot of the reason they were able to take such a commanding lead in this election was because of the mismanagement of the Conservative Party. As you can see here, they were only able to win 16% of the popular vote, and only 2 seats, 1 in New Brunswick and 1 in Quebec. The Reform Party took over much of the Conservative Party's support in Western Canada after the Progressive Conservative Party under Brian Mulroney supported the Beach Lake Accord and the Charlottetown Accord in the early 90s, which was very unpopular in Western Canada, especially BC and Ontario. And the Beach Lake Accord and Charlottetown Accord were very unpopular in both BC and Alberta, which was why Reform was able to win so many seats here. and the Conservative Party won 0 in these provinces. This is also why they were able to win about 19% of the popular vote, because they were able to capitalize on Western dissatisfaction with the federal government. However, they only won 1 seat outside of, I guess, Western Canada, or 2 depending on what you consider Western Canada. They were able to win 1 in Manitoba and 1 in Ontario. But a lot of the reason why the Progressive Conservative Party were not able to win seats in Ontario was because of vote splitting between the Reform Party and the Progressive Conservative Party. So the Bloc Québécois were able to win 13.5% of the popular vote, and the NDP had a very bad showing, only winning 9 seats and 7% of the popular vote. Now, if I go to 1997, this is another Liberal majority, although this one is a lot closer. The Progressive Conservative Party still only had 20 seats. This is just because of the continued popularity of Reform, who were able to pick up seats in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, despite losing their seat in Ontario. And they were able to keep their support in BC, which helped them win 60 seats, which was 8 more than they won before. Liberals still won the popular vote with 38.5%, with Reform increasing that total from before to 19.4%. Progressive Conservative Party were actually able to come close to Reform's total, but because Reform had so much support in Western Canada, while the Progressive Conservative support was pretty evenly distributed, the Reform Party were able to win triple the seats. The Bloc Québécois under Gilles Duceppe still had strength in Quebec, winning 44 seats, although they did lose seats to the Liberals here. And the Progressive Conservative Party were also able to pick up 4 seats in Quebec. Now, if I go over to 2000, this is the election before the Conservative Party of Canada was formed. Progressive Conservative Party is still not doing very well due to the Canadian Alliance, which was the continuation of the Reform Party. This time, the Canadian Alliance were able to win 25.5% of the popular vote, but the Liberals still holding a commanding majority with 40.8% of the popular vote. And 172 seats under Jean Chrétien. Same thing, the Canadian Alliance had more support in Ontario than Reform ever did, but still their main power base was in Western Canada, and this time they were able to expand support in Saskatchewan, winning 8 seats there, compared to only winning 2 or 1 seat. And this time they were able to expand their support in Saskatchewan by being able to win 8 seats, compared to 6 the year before, and only 2, I believe. Yeah, only 4 in 1993. The Progressive Conservative Party had one of the worst showings in the popular vote ever. Only 12.2% of Canadians voted for the Progressive Conservative Party under Joe Clark. However, vote splitting was still an issue, and the Canadian Alliance probably could have picked up more seats in Ontario if Progressive Conservative voters voted for them instead. The NDP still only at 8.5% of the popular vote, and the Bloc Québécois at about 11%, but their support was decreasing over this time. Now, 2004 is the first election where the Conservative Party of Canada existed. Under Stephen Harper, they were able to win more seats, 99 seats in total, and they reduced the Liberal government to a minority government with 135 seats. And here, as you can see, Liberals won 37% of the popular vote, but this time the Conservative Party, with the combined support of the Canadian Alliance and the Progressive Conservative Party, were able to win about 30% of the vote. Jack Layton was able to increase the NDP's vote share massively, winning 16% of the vote, which was a lot more than their previous elections. And the Bloc Québécois were able to consolidate support in Quebec, wiping out the Conservative Party there, with 54 seats. Now, if I go to 2006, this was the election after the no-confidence vote in Paul Martin, because he had a minority government. And this time, the Conservatives were able to win a minority government with 124 seats. They won 36% of the popular vote, which was the first time that there was a prime minister other than a Liberal prime minister since 1993. The Liberals were able to win 30.2% of the popular vote and win 103 seats, which was reduced largely due to a lack of support in Quebec, Ontario, and most of the Liberals' decline in support came from Quebec and Ontario, where they lost seats to the Conservative Party in 2006, and thus got reduced to 103 seats with 30% of the popular vote. The Bloc Québécois still held a similar popular vote number, with 51 seats in Quebec, and the NDP were able to increase their seat total by 10, and their popular vote total stood at about 18%. Now, if I go to 2008, as you can see here, the Conservative Party were able to win another minority government, but still increasing their seat total. So, as you can see here, 37% of the popular vote, 143 seats, and increasing their support in Ontario again helped them gain these seats, as well as in Atlantic Canada, especially in the provinces of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. They were also able to consolidate their support in Western Canada as they had been previously. The Liberals were only able to win 26.3% of the popular vote and 77 seats, which is a very bad showing considering that they had won over or very close to 30% of the popular vote in every election since the 90s. Gilles Ducep's Bloc Québécois, 10% of the popular vote, nothing much changed. They lost 2 seats, but they still had a commanding 49 seats in Quebec. The NDP were also able to increase their seat total again, with 18% of the popular vote, but 37 seats this time over 29. Now, the 2011 election, this is when Stephen Harper was able to win a majority government by basically wiping out the Liberals in Ontario, and also being able, once again, to maintain support in Western Canada, as well as gaining support in the Atlantic provinces. So, Stephen Harper was able to win 40% of the popular vote and 166 seats. The NDP had their best showing ever with 103 seats, mostly because of Quebec, as they were able to win 58 seats out of Quebec, and thus were able to win 103 seats with 30% of the popular vote. The Liberals under Michael Ignatieff were only able to win 19% of the popular vote with 34 seats. Even though the Liberals under Michael Ignatieff were only able to win 19% of the popular vote and 34 seats. Most of the reason for their loss of seats was because of their loss of support in Ontario. As you can see, in 2008, they were able to win about just less than half of the seats in Ontario. And although the Conservatives won more, they were still able to maintain a decent level of support there. However, in 2011, they lost a lot of these seats in Ontario to the Conservatives and the Liberals, not the Liberals, the NDP. And in BC as well, they only won 2 seats compared to 5 before. And in Atlantic Canada, they were basically not fully wiped out, but the Conservatives were able to pick up a few seats there as well, helping them win a majority government. The Bloc Québécois had their biggest collapse ever with only 6.1% of the popular vote and only 4 seats because the NDP had huge strength in Quebec. Now, if we go to 2015, this is where the Liberals were able to take a commanding majority government away from the Conservatives. They were able to regain their support in Ontario and also take a lot of the NDP support away in Quebec. And this is the main reason why they were able to win this election. And also Atlantic Canada, they were able to win all of the 32 seats in the Atlantic provinces. And this was a huge loss to the Conservatives. Justin Trudeau's Liberals were able to win 39.5% of the popular vote to the Conservative Party's 32%. The NDP won 19.7% of the popular vote, which was a pretty big letdown, as they lost about 60 seats, mostly in Quebec and Ontario, despite being first in the polls as the election campaign started. The Bloc Québécois gained some of their support back with 10 seats, but only 4.7% of the popular vote. And if I go to 2019, the most recent election, we've already gone through this a little bit. As you can see, 33% of the popular vote going to the Liberals, winning a minority government, although the Conservatives won more votes. As I've explained before, most of their support was in Western Canada, so they were wasted votes, and so they only won 121 seats. The Bloc Québécois had a resurgence with 32 seats, and 7.7% of the popular vote, and the NDP under Jagmeet Singh was only able to win 16% of the popular vote, 24 seats, And that's it, really. The others, there was 1 independent in BC, 2 Greens, and 1 Green in New Brunswick. So this is the first time that so this is the first time that an incumbent party has lost the popular vote and still been able to stay in power even with a minority government. And this obviously increased calls for electoral reform, such as proportional representation or ranked choice voting, that the Liberals had promised in the last election but never delivered on. So that's really all I have for you today. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you all next time.